You've been fishing a lot lately.
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually used to fish more, but I just came back from the West Coast, and I was fortunate enough to get out for a day before we got 2 inches of rain and was able to get a trophy steelhead.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm known in the world for steelhead float fishing, and I got a real nice trophy fish on a WFO rubber worm. Black with a chartreuse tail. Not what most people think for steelhead, right? They're thinking pink worms. So
why were you running it?
Well, because everybody else runs pink
worms.
A lot of it has to do with the water clarity too, right? So
go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, tell me about this fish. I keep hearing trophy. Like how?
What is it? What's a trophy?
So, what does that mean?
Well, it was over 20 pounds, and so out west, the wild ocean run steelhead, you can't bring them out of the water. They got to stay in the water. You can only handle them for a few seconds, get a couple photos, and let it go. And so all you can do is take measurements and estimate the fish, and it was trophy fish.
Yeah.
So I was happy to catch it.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
So one of the things, from our perspective, from the fish hawk perspective, we're selling a lot more product in the West Coast now than we ever have in the past. And we've always been Great Lakes. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is the differences in fishing tactics, fishing mentality from the West Coast to the Great Lakes.
Yeah,
what can you tell us about? I mean, is that my imagination or is that real?
So let me educate you.
Yeah, please do.
So I'm from Michigan.
Okay.
I've been fishing Erie Tribs and Steelhead Alley my whole life. And out here, we run a 6, an 8, 11, maybe a 15-gram float. Out there, I was running 1 ounce, which is 35 grams. So they're using 35 and 40 grams. But the reason for that is they've got some big rivers, like real rivers. Like
Columbia River. Yeah.
Just the velocity, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they got boulders the size of this table.
Sure.
And full transparency, I've been rowing a drift boat my whole life. No way am I rowing.
Yeah.
I got buddies that do that for me because, there's some real rivers.
They're pulling,
and so because they're moving so fast and you've got to get down because you've only got so much of a window for a bite window, and they use bigger stuff and they use larger profiles.
And are you center pinning there? Are you center pinning here? Or?
Yeah, I center pin. That particular fish I caught on a spiral wrap bait caster. Mm-hmm. I was fishing some prototype rods that Lamiglas and I have designed.
Okay.
Was fishing those, but it was on a bait caster.
Okay.
But I do a lot of center pinning. I pull plugs. I throw spinners. I have a seminar later today on spinners, so whatever it takes to put fish in the net.
Just pulling those spinners. Is that something that I just remember as a kid? It was, just go out there and pull some spinners.
So, that's a good question. I mean, really about the spinner bite, I definitely use it as a tactic early in the fall. And the purpose of that is if you don't have enough, because like in Michigan, we'll use Michigan as an example because that's where I'm from, but we have the Manistee strain run fish. It's a spring run fish. They don't have to come up in the fall. That's what most people don't realize. They don't have to come up. And so if God blesses us with the right weather and the right temps and rain to bring us fish up early, but early, late September, early October, there's fish in the rivers because every river has its own run clock, but there's not a lot of them. And so I use a spinner as a searching bait, as a searching tool to find fish. And then once I locate fish, then because an average steelhead pot is going to be 15 to 25 fish in the Great Lakes, where out west you might get a pair, of wild fish. But anyways, once I've located them, then, I can anchor up and maybe use some more finesse techniques. And then the other time I use spinners would be later in the season and actually in the winter time. The water gets so cold here, out west, it very rarely gets below 38 degrees. I mean, here, that's warm water for the winter, right? So What I like to do is when we're at that 33-degree water period and the fish are basically like in a lethargic coma, because they're so cold, I'll use a number 5 silver blade, an actual bigger blade, to try to wake that fish up out of its sleep. So a spinner can be used year round, in my opinion.
So. 2 other things, and this is kind of the West Coast, East Coast thing, right?
Yeah.
Scent. So scents seem like they're just way more prevalent in use in Western rivers.
So I'll give you my take on scent.
Yeah.
So a fish can smell in parts per billion. If people can't wrap their head around how good that is, that's 1,000 times better than my German short-haired pointer. And this is what cracks me up about the Great Lakes. So the fish use their nose to navigate. The fish use their nose to avoid danger. The fish use their nose to find food. But mysteriously, when they get into the river, they no longer use their nose. Who believes this crap, right? And so what I'm trying to tell people is every time you touch something, you deposit L-sarin. So in 1987, some Canadian scientists took human skin cells and created a homeopathic solution. They deposited into the river. The salmon stopped migrating. Now, did they say that's Roger Hinchcliff and he's going to eat me? No. Then they took bear pelts and put them in the river. The fish stopped migrating. Did they say Yogi the bear is going to eat me? Of course not. And so I feel like finally, through education, people in the Great Lakes are finally realizing that scent can help your catch rates. And I don't care what you're fishing for. And so in my seminars, I explain to people out west in a retail location, there will be scents from the floor
that's
all
what
the
I see.
way to the ceiling.
I mean, aisles of it.
Aisles of it. And you come here and people, they're just trying to sell me something. But for the salmon trolling guys or the walleye guys, you'll see them come up to the fly or the spoon and then they refuse it. Well, that's because it didn't smell right. So it's not the end all be all.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, from bass to steelhead, walleye, whatever, scent can actually help you catch more fish, in my opinion.
You really see that. And I noticed that too. That's what maybe really pay attention is, just like you said, you go into a fishing retail store in the Western United States, and there's a significant amount of shelf space dedicated to just to scent, and you just don't see that here. The other question I have, maybe it's not a question, but the observation maybe is, it kind of makes me, when Chris and I were out in Oregon last June and doing sampling some of the fishing there, but coming home, it makes you kind of appreciate what you got here. I mean, if you're a Michigander, right, or the Great Lake, I mean, we've got some fantastic. I mean, we're fishing Pacific fish, but we're fishing them in the Great Lakes.
We stock 5.2 million steelhead yearly, so we have the world's largest steelhead population on planet Earth, but we also have the largest angling population for steelhead on planet Earth. And that's all the more reason for scent, because you're fishing for overfished fish.
Sure.
Because most folks don't realize that fish have memory spans and they get educated. Because most folks release their steelhead. So once you caught that high metabolism fish, right, which has the shortest memory span, or you got a slow metabolism fish, which has the longest memory span, every time you catch one of those fish, you just took a willful biter out of the deal. But what's great for us is if you get another high water event or another weather event, it brings you more fresh fish, more willful biters. We are truly spoiled rotten
in the Great Lakes.
In the Great Lakes. And my friends out west, for sure.
I think they're jealous.
Well, I'm not going to publicly say that and get myself in trouble, but I will say that I think, I've had people say I'm jealous, because you can still have a 30, 40 fish steelhead day in the Great Lakes.
Right.
I mean, years ago, before steelheading got real popular on Ohio trips, I used to have 100 fish a day. You know what I mean? That's insane. But out there, you're fishing for 1 to 3 bites a day. A day.
Yeah.
And like, if you get that bobber down and you were late to the party on the hook set.
Well, I mean, you always think of as a kid, I always dreamed of the Alaskan salmon trip.
Yes.
The Alaskan salmon trip now, in some rivers, you get your tag.
Yeah.
You catch your fish, you're done.
Yeah.
That's one fish. Well, we're going to go out on Lake Ontario in May on the bar, and we're going to get 30 or 40 bites a morning.
Yep.
I mean, that
Now,
just
see, like
doesn't
on
happen
the trolling game out west, they get 1 rod per man.
yeah, exactly.
In
Barbless
Michigan,
hooks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Michigan, you got 3 rods a man.
Yeah. Right.
You know, so seeing, 11, 12 rods
Doesn't happen.
You don't see that out there, but you see it in the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
So we're spoiled. World-class fishery, no doubt.
So we've got a lot of people that watch. They're in the trolling game. That's what they do.
Yeah.
Maybe I just want to go fishing for an hour after work. I don't have to deal with putting the boat in, taking it out, doing all that kind of stuff. How would somebody who has been a troller and they want to get into this game, what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, pretty straightforward. I mean, at the end of the day, so the fly guys call it a strike indicator. The hardcore center pin guys call it a float. At the end of the day, it's a bobber.
It's a bobber.
Right?
I knew we were going
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. It's a bobber. I mean, my first fish was on a bluegill, was on a bobber, and it was a bluegill. But I would tell them, at a minimum, get a 9.5-foot rod. That's a great rod, all-around rod. Now, if you have a larger stream, maybe a 10-6 float rod, right? You just need a float, right? A bobber. And you're going to need some split shot to weight your float down. Then you would run a tiny swivel and then a fluorocarbon leader. And then from there, the sky's the limit. You could use a jig, right? You could use a leech, a night crawler, a bead, or a spawn bag, even a shrimp. That's another thing that cracks me up. The pier guys that fish on piers will fish with shrimp. But mysteriously, when the steelhead pass the concrete barrier, they go into the river. They won't. I mean, come on, guys. So they're steelhead. Their diet is very vast, and pretty much they'll eat anything. The name of the game is to always remember that a steelhead is 8 inches off the bottom. They're there for a reason. And it's not only into the drop back phase that they're not 8 inches off the bottom. So when you set your float depth, you want to make sure you're close to the bottom, because that's going to help you get more bites and more fish. And that's it.
Yeah. Pretty simple, pretty easy.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bobber.
Right?
Hey, say what you will, but the moment that the bobber gets sucked underwater, it's
the tug is the drug.
The tug is the drug.
When that bobber drains, we call it the bobber drain. Yep. When it goes under and you set that hook and hey, the mighty steelhead is the fastest freshwater fish on planet Earth. It moves at 26 feet per second, which is around 35 miles per hour. When you get one on, it's a lot of fun.
Right.
I think the word I used earlier was Romanak was psycho, because when I think steelhead, I think psycho. And then
if you ever get a chance to either fish Michigan or Northwest Indiana for the scamania, the landing ratio of a scam is about 33%. I mean, you're only going to land 1 out of 3. And the reason is because of their fat factor. Our Manistee strain fish have a 4% fat factor, and the Manistee or the Scamania strain has a larger fat factor. It's the fat factor and water temp which dictates how hard they fight. But if you've ever done battle with a Scamania, it's cartwheeling evil.
Yeah.
They're a lot of fun.
Cartwheeling evil.
To me, I think they're the closest to the saltwater fish out west.
That western fish.
Roger, I don't want you to give away like your secret spot or anything, but kind of the places that are well-known type destinations for steelhead. What are some of your kind of favorite spots?
I would tell people for Michigan, if you come to Michigan, the Manistee River is an amazing place. It actually gets wild fish too, right? The Manistee River, the Grand River, the Pure Marquette River, the Betsy River. There's all kinds of rivers to fish. Out here, the Cattaraugus Creek is good. Obviously, the mighty Niagara. I did fish that the other day. I got 2 words for you: chocolate milk.
Yeah. I've heard it's a little brown here this week.
What it is the wind. Hey, that's fishing, right?
Yeah.
But I was happy that I got out on the mighty Niagara and got to experience it. And
it's cool when you go up to the gorge there and some of those big sinkholes and stuff. That's pretty. Oh yeah, I saw one of them whirlpools. Yeah, it's real deal. I was like, boy, thank God I got my Blue Cross paid and my heart right with Jesus and a life jacket, because that was intimidating. I'm not going to lie to you.
You're wearing a Lamiglas hat, and I know that's a brand that you work for and a brand that you're passionate about. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I started working for Lamiglas in 2016 as a pro staffer. In 2017, they had asked me to design my very first rod with them. And since then, I've designed over 33 different rods for them, and including walleye rods, all 13 walleye rods, I designed those. But what had happened is things went so well with my rod designs and our sales out here that I was promoted to the national sales manager. So I managed all the sales staff around the country. And then in October of last year, unfortunately, our CEO had been in an airplane crash and passed away. And so a position opened up and I became the vice president of the company.
Now you have a real job.
Yeah, I got a real job.
That's one of those be careful what you wish for.
Well,
right?
see, that's the thing. Everyone thinks, well, once you get into that fishing industry, all you do is fish.
I think we could all.
Yeah.
We
all we do is talk about.
Right.
Yeah, we're here. You guys are out there. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm going to try to get some fishing in. But if folks aren't familiar, Lamiglas is the godfather of every fishing rod in this building.
Yeah.
Right. We're the ones that perfected graphite with the Boeing engineers back in the 70s, and we've been in business since 1949. Fenwick came from us. Sage Rods came from us. Gary Loomis spent 7 years with us. So it's an iconic brand. Our strong suits is salmon, steelhead, and the surf rod arena. But we are offering, bass rods, walleye rods, trout and panfish rods. And now that, I'm kind of elevated in the company, we are going to take things into some other directions, and we're going to try to expand in some other arenas and other channels of the fishing business.
I remember my first true steelhead rod was tied on a Lamiglas.
Was it? Awesome.
Oh yeah, that was a big deal. It was my first drift rod was tied on a Lamiglas.
Well, to be honest with you, we had a rough 2 years during COVID. Even though sales were there, our problem was getting the stuff. We needed cork and guides and glue and reel seats and graphite and employees. That's another subject.
We've all been there. Yeah. So.
Very good, Roger. Is there anything that anything else you wanted to talk about before we let you go here?
No, I'll tell you this. I would encourage people to come out to a show like this, and I always open my seminars up. Listen, I don't profess to know everything because I don't. Everyone's entitled to an opinion, but nobody's entitled to the facts. And what I would tell people is, if you got cabin fever, get on out, come to one of these shows, go to a seminar, and learn, because it's a lifelong journey. You will never know it all. We can all learn from each other. And that's what I'd encourage people to do. And just get outdoors and enjoy the sport of fishing, because to me, it truly is therapy.
Trevor, any closing thoughts?
How can you best that? I mean, that's right. Doesn't get any better than that. So that was perfect.
Speaking the truth for Roger Hinchcliff, Trevor Sumption, thanks so much for watching this afternoon.